Does anyone else love John Carpenter's Halloween but have a hard time figuring out what their favorite scenes are? Well, hopefully this video helps you out with that problem, because I'm ranking every scene in this movie. There are 34 of them to my count. If you went through the movie and counted out scenes, I'm sure you could come up with a different number than me. I had to break up certain scenes here or there just to make this video work. But I think my first place scene is gonna surprise some people. It kind of surprised me. If you're interested, check out the chapter descriptions to go right to that scene. If not, strap in. There's 34 scenes to rank from worst to best. Starting off in last place at number 34, we got Loomis finding Michael's car. This is the worst scene in the movie. It's the only scene that I think is bad. It makes Loomis seem incompetent that he didn't spot this station wagon outside of a house that he's staked out for hours at this point. And the fact that he should recognize the station wagon, seeing as he was a passenger in it the previous night. And the geography of Haddonfield just doesn't make sense. Like, how is this car here? We saw Michael park it outside of the Wallace house earlier. We know from Laurie's walk to school and then Laurie and Annie driving to babysitting that these are drastically different routes that they would take. So makes no sense that this car is here. That's why this scene is in last place. Coming in at number 33, we have Loomis beginning his drive to Haddonfield. This scene has a really good line from Loomis when he says, "He was doing very well last night." That's a great impression.
He was doing very well last night.
Thanks, Dr. Loomis. I mean, I wasn't really practicing this. I kind of just ad-libbed it, but your support is appreciated. And that is what this scene does show, is that Loomis doesn't have the support of anyone. Wynn is just discounting everything he says. But the scene is just a plot scene. It's just to get Loomis started on his journey, so it's low in these rankings. At number 32, we've got Loomis searching for Michael. This scene basically bridges two parts of the brilliant final chase, and it's Loomis's plot immediately following him stupidly finding the station wagon. But this scene carries the momentum of the final chase into it, so there's just an intensity going here. So that's why this scene is a little bit higher than the prior ones. At number 31, we've got Linda calling Laurie and learning that Annie and Lindsay are gone for the night, so she and Bob can go and do things at full volume. This scene is like purely a transition scene. Like, yeah, Michael's in the house, but this is not a scary scene per se. But it's this high because I like the tiny bit of character development we get for Laurie, and that is that wistful look on her face when she's looking across the street. Just shows that Laurie is kind of feeling like she's missing out. Halloween does this really well throughout the movie, just developing Laurie's character as more and more horror is going on, like simultaneously. It's just really well done. At number 30, I'm doing Loomis dirty by going back to him. This is him at the cemetery. And I should probably mention that my rankings are not just based on the quality of the scenes. They are based on three things: quality, the importance of the scene, and the length of the scene. So this scene is actually pretty good. It's just super short, and it is not important at all. It's probably the least important scene in the movie. I mean, why is Loomis going to the cemetery? Like, why is that on his to-do list? It's like, let's get to Haddonfield. Let's talk to the police. Let's stake out the Myers house. And also, let's stop off at the graveyard and check Judith Myers' plot on the off chance that Michael went and stole the headstone. Like, is that a common thing people do? I don't know. This is completely nonsensical, but it's still an enjoyable scene, and it has a great Loomis line to finish things up, which is why it's higher than the other scenes.
He came home.
No, he didn't. He went to school. Number 29 is Michael following Tommy at the school. And I like this scene in spite of itself because I don't think it should exist. I think it kind of takes away from the focused nature of this movie of Michael stalking Laurie. It just feels awkward that Michael's like, oh, target acquired when he spotted Laurie. And then he's like, I'm bored. Maybe I'll head over to the elementary school and follow that kid also. But still, the scene is very effective. It uses the classic Halloween theme really well. It's got one hell of a jump scare. And just seeing Michael walking while Tommy's unaware of him, that is pretty scary. So I think it's a worthy scene. I just think the movie actually would have been better without it. At number 28, we've got really the only reason why the previous scene even needed to exist. This is the scene where Tommy and Laurie talk about Tommy's fear of the boogeyman. And I like the scene. I like the relationship between Laurie and Tommy. I think it gives the movie some much needed warmth. And I also like that Tommy's afraid of the boogeyman, and it kind of mirrors in a childlike way how Loomis talks about Michael and Michael's evil. It's just two sides of a coin. But it's the least essential scene at the Doyle house, so it finds itself down pretty low. At number 27, we got Laurie waiting for Annie on the corner. This scene is up here because of what scene it follows. It's immediately following the scene where Laurie spotted Michael watching her multiple times. The same music is playing. It still looks kind of like the same time outside, so we're kind of expecting to see Michael around, and so when we don't, it comes as kind of a shock. The only thing I don't like about the scene is Jamie Lee Curtis's acting. I mean, she's okay, but I don't think she sells the fact that she's kind of a nervous wreck based on what she's been seeing all day. She just sort of looks like she's saying, oh, look how cute, those kids are trick-or-treating, what a fun-filled day. So that's a minor nitpick, but the rest of the scene's pretty good. At number 26, we got Loomis finding the mechanic. I guess he doesn't actually find the mechanic for some reason. He finds Michael's hospital gown and the matchbook. We find the mechanic. All right, whatever, I'm going off on a tangent. But so this is another in the series of scenes of Loomis just journeying to Haddonfield, like these short little scenes that don't really advance the plot. But this one is more important because it shows the audience how dangerous Michael is. It tells Loomis that, yep, his intuition was right. Michael is on his way to Haddonfield. And it shows how Michael got his jumpsuit. At number 25, we've got Linda and Bob arriving at the house. Bob has a very tasteless joke early on. It's a stupid, like late 70s idiotic joke. Don't need to go into any more depth into that. But this scene is not actually that memorable. But it hits towards the end of it when after they start making out. Then that music kicks in, and then you just see Michael watching him. It's like so ominous. Just this predator has identified his next set of prey. Also, I really like the touch of Bob carrying Linda into the house in the exact same manner that Michael just carried Annie into the house. I don't know if that was intentional, but I like that touch, if it was a touch at all. At number 24, we have the reason Bob and Linda came to this house in the first place: to prevent me from watching this movie with my dad ever again. I used to watch Halloween with my dad because I had recorded it off of cable, so it was edited. Now I have like the 4K and the Blu-rays and all that stuff. I'm not watching this with him. That would be very awkward. But the scene itself, you know, it's pretty non-essential, but I think it's just directed incredibly well. Like, your eyes are going to be naturally drawn to what's going on beneath the sheets on one side of the frame. And then to have Michael's shadow pop up on the other side with that musical sting and then his breathing, I think it's just really good at showing how Michael's always around. He's always watching. He's everywhere. It's that constant feeling of evil just enveloping these kids without them knowing it while they're just having fun. At number 23, we have Annie taking Lindsay over to the Doyle house. This is the breather scene between Annie being stalked and Annie being killed, but it carries the momentum right throughout, so it's still got that intensity. What I really like about the scene, though, is Laurie pleading with Annie to call Ben Tramer and tell him she was just kidding. Just those little character moments that continue developing Laurie as the horror gets more and more pervasive just makes what's happening feel that much more tragic. At number 22, we've got Tommy seeing Michael carrying Annie's body. So there are other images in this movie that I think are far creepier. I mean, this is a fairly creepy image, but I like the ones where he's just like standing there. Here it's like Michael's been caught without knowing it, which kind of takes away from his mystique. But what I like about the scene is how the sound from The Thing from Another World, I think is the movie that they're watching, but the sound from that movie kind of plays over the scene when he actually sees Michael. And I also like how Lindsay is like, I believe you, Tommy. It's just adorable. At number 21, we have Michael following Laurie and Annie in the car. What I like about the scene is similar to the scene where Laurie was waiting for Annie. It plays on the audience's expectations again. That previous scene played the same music that Carpenter used when we saw Michael watching Laurie. So when we didn't see him in that last scene, it was a surprise. Here, there's no music other than Don't Fear the Reaper, which is a great song. But then Michael unexpectedly shows up and just casually starts following them.
Watching you. Mr. Riddle was watching you, Laurie. Mr. Riddle is 87.
And on rewatch, you just kind of forget that he's even there, which makes it all the more scary when you think about it. And then to cap it off, when Loomis just misses Michael by a second, just a good solid transition into the nighttime section of the movie. At number 20, we got Loomis staking out the Myers house. And despite this having some brilliant Loomis moments, it's kind of low in these rankings, and I'll explain that in a minute, but I want to focus on its strengths first. So this scene is like the much needed comic relief moment for both the movie and for Loomis himself when he scares Lonnie Elam and then just has that adorable smile on his face. But also, this scene is heightened by some of that prototypical Loomis hyperbolic dialogue.
Death has come to your little town, Sheriff.
The only problem with this scene is it's kind of a repeat of the earlier scene between Loomis and Brackett in the Myers house. Kind of shines a light on the fact that Loomis doesn't do all that much in the back half of the movie, which is a minor blemish on this scene. At number 19, we've got the opening credits. These are so effective. They're so goddamn good. The music is brilliant. It's my favorite horror music in the world. It sets the tone for the movie incredibly. The atmosphere is just palpable. Whenever I pop this movie in and hear the first beats of that score, it just gets me so juiced up and amped up to watch this movie. They are brilliant, and I miss credits like this. Like, movies nowadays don't do opening credits like this, if they even have opening credits. At number 18, we got the girls arriving at their babysitting gigs. You probably have noticed by now that I really like when the normal stuff is kind of contrasted with the horror in this movie. And this scene, I think, does it really well. It starts with just a very intimate conversation between two friends with the camera just really up close to these girls. So you almost completely forget that Michael's right behind them as they're talking about Ben Tramer. And then it transitions into horror with the classic Carpenter theme. And then it switches to nighttime, which is kind of silly. But then Michael gets out of the car and just strodes right over to the Wallace house to watch Annie. And it's like he has decided he's going after Annie first. And that's just terrifying. It's a great start to the sequence of the movie. Number 17 is Michael watching Laurie from across the street. This is an incredible scene. It's just a short scene, which is why it's so low in these rankings. But it's the first time we see Michael and that otherworldly nature where he just stands and stares. We don't have any idea how long he's been staring at her because Laurie just looked out the window. He could have been there for an hour, but it's a magnificent scene. It's just a short scene, which is why it is smack dab in the middle of these rankings. At number 16, we've got the trio of girls walking home as Michael drives by them. So this scene is the one that I think shows you that every moment in this movie is not safe from terror. That sounded cheesy, but what I mean is it's just a normal conversation with the three girls. We meet Linda and Annie for the first time here, and you don't really know what to expect because it's pretty early in the movie. And then Michael just drives right by, and it's like, oh shit, he is absolutely following Laurie. What I don't like about the scene is PJ Souls. So many totallys. It's the one part of the script that I don't really like. Scratch that. There's another part of the script I don't like.
So who cares? I always forget my chemistry book and my math book and my English book and my French book. And, well, who needs books anyway? I don't need books. I always forget all of my books. I mean,
Also, I'm so confused when Annie says, "Hey jerk, speed kills," because the way it's shot, I can't tell if Michael's speeding or not. Like, I think he guns it after he's like peering at the girls, but it's not super clear. So I can never tell if Michael's annoyed because Annie was like insulting him, like calling out his manhood or something for driving so slow, or if he's like, oh shit, she's gonna call the cops on me. Maybe I should kill him now. And then he decides, I'll wait for later. At number 15, we've got Michael's escape from Smith's Grove. And this scene is this high, based almost solely on the power of Loomis's understated introduction.
Don't underestimate it,
Don't you think we could refer to it as him?
if you say so.
He's so quiet and beaten down, and some of his lines, they're subtle in a way that Loomis is not subtle later in the series, but they're just so effective. The part of the scene that doesn't work for me is Michael's actual escape. Like, the musical sting that accompanies the shot of Michael jumping on the station wagon is John Carpenter's worst bit of music in this movie, in my opinion. And then Marion Chambers, like, if you see a bunch of mental patients, like, outside the car in the rain, and then you feel like someone jumping on the car and, like, rumbling about it on top, do you really roll down the window at this point and try to get a better look? I would probably be trying to get low to the ground, or, I don't know, getting the hell out of the car. It's just a goofy escape scene. I do like Loomis's final line in the scene, though.
He's gone. He's gone from here. The evil is gone.
Did I really say that his introduction was understated? Well, there's nothing understated about Bob's death. That's number 14 in these rankings, and the actual kill is my favorite in the movie. It's the most visceral kill in the movie. Michael shows his incredible strength for the first time, and that incredible shot at the end with Michael tilting his head repeatedly with that childlike wonder, which is basically just telling us, yep, he is the shape. He is not a man. The scene also gets points for mostly being one shot, with Bob going all over the kitchen, and slowly Michael's breathing becomes more and more audible. The reason the scene is not as high as one would expect is A, it's shorter, B, we don't actually get to know Bob very much, we don't care about Bob, and C, Michael doesn't really stalk Bob. We don't get all of that setup to this scene. This is a very different type of suspenseful scene in Halloween. Number 13 is Michael stalking Annie as she's on the phone with Laurie. This scene has three things going for it. For one, it's the first time we see Michael sort of focused on a character from up close. We're in his sort of omniscient point of view when from like behind his shoulder or just from behind his head as he's watching Annie, and it's a different feel than all the stalking scenes prior to this. The second thing is this magnificent shot of Tommy looking out the window and seeing Michael. I used to not be a fan of this shot because I thought it was Tommy just sort of catching Michael watching Annie, which I didn't think there was much to that. Now, having perused Reddit threads about this and seeing it in 4K, I can see that Michael is staring at Tommy, which is way scarier. Like, that means that Michael was watching Annie and then was like, let me just turn around arbitrarily and stare at the Doyle house just as this kid looks at me. That shit is creepy. Well, quick side note from me from the future by like a few minutes. I was convinced that Michael was now staring at Tommy. Then I edited this video and I put in that zoomed in shot. And now I am not as convinced. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. Do you think Michael is staring at Annie and he got caught by Tommy? Or do you think he's staring at Tommy and still got caught by Tommy? Let's get back to past me. And third, I think this may be the best example of character development while scary stuff is happening. Just that contrast between Michael actively stalking Annie while Laurie is just having her day-to-day anxiety about Annie having told Ben Tramer that Laurie had a crush on him. It's just a really, really strong mix. At number 12, we've got the prologue where Michael kills his sister. Maybe this scene being this low is surprising to you, but it definitely didn't surprise me. On a technical and conceptual level, this is top-notch. It sets up the series exquisitely. It's an audacious start to the movie, just using this one tracking POV shot around the house, through the house, up the stairs, and then killing this poor innocent girl. And then the reveal that it's a kid, and then that vacant look on Michael's face as the camera pans out. It's just fantastic. However, this scene has not aged as well as the rest of this movie, in my opinion. For one, when he starts looking at the knife as he's killing Judith, it just kind of feels hokey. And then the final shot, I really wish that the actress who was playing Mrs. Myers didn't just put her hands in her pockets. I don't know if John Carpenter noticed or even cared about that, but that part always takes me out of the movie just a tiny bit. At number 11, we've got Michael disappearing into the night. This is the perfect ending to Halloween. It's a short scene, which is the only reason it's ranked so low, but it captures what John Carpenter was going for, that evil can be anywhere, that evil can't be stopped, and that Michael was just this inhuman personification of evil all movie. And the look on Dr. Loomis's face, what a fantastic ending to a movie. Sneaking into the top 10 is Annie's death. And this scene works because of all the groundwork laid out by the elaborate stalking sequence earlier. Because when she was in the laundry room, we kept seeing Michael in the background over and over and over. And then we don't see him for most of the scene. Like, Annie just keeps walking back and forth through the house. There's a lot of still shots. There's a lot of opportunities for Michael to pop out, and he just doesn't. And the tension just keeps ratcheting higher and higher to the point that you kind of miss the fact that when she tried the car door earlier, it was locked. She went to get her keys, came back, didn't use the keys, and still got in the car anyway. And that's such a good touch. The actual kill, I think there are cheesy aspects to it, like Annie's O-face after she dies is very odd. But I like that this is Michael who is just learning the ropes of killing, because for like 30 seconds, he's like just trying to strangle her. He doesn't know how to actually finish the job. It just keeps going. It's not a violent, well, no, it's not a bloody scene, but it's an incredibly violent scine. At number 9, we've got Linda's death scene. And there's two parts to this scene. There's her actual death, and then there's the follow-up. The follow-up I've always loved. Like when Michael puts the phone to his ear and we get our first clean shot of the mask. What an incredible moment. The ghost scene, where Michael dresses up like Bob wearing a ghost costume, I used to dislike this because it's kind of stupid. Why would Michael like go and find a sheet and cut out the holes in the eyes and make sure that it fits over his eyes and then put the glasses on? Like, it all just seems like a lot of work. But as I've gotten older, I appreciate the scene more because I think it captures Michael's inhuman patience, the fact that you can't really understand him, even though you could argue that he's doing this to see some breasts, but also that this is just a being that you cannot fathom. You cannot understand this guy. At number 8, we have Laurie walking to school, and this is high for a scene where hardly anything happens, but I feel like this is the scene that sort of sets up everything about the movie going forward. Like at this point in the movie, we don't know what to expect in terms of horror because we'd had a couple of horror scenes, but those had been setup scenes. This is where the movie starts to get going, and it establishes itself with these beautiful shots of Laurie just walking, and she's so small in the frame, and it all seems really normal and safe. And yet, with the music and just the way things are framed, it feels like something is encroaching from outside of the frame, something inevitable. And that eventually comes to fruition at the end of the scene when Michael shows up. It just establishes this sinister tone that permeates the rest of the movie. At number 7, we've got Michael's final attack on Laurie. And this scene is top 10 material solely based on this shot. The rest of the scene is really good, but that shot, my God, man, that shot. I do enjoy when Michael also stands up and is lumbering after Laurie. He just is clearly injured from all the stuff that Laurie's done to him up to this point. And then Michael's attack on Laurie, his actual strangulation attempt, just like the scene with Annie, it's like Michael's struggling to actually kill someone. The rest of the scene is good, but there are a couple of issues. Like, I'm not a huge fan of Michael being unmasked. I just don't think it adds anything to the movie. I really enjoy Loomis getting involved in the climax and shooting his former patient. It just completes Loomis's character arc, this scene, and when he actually goes and sees that Michael disappeared in the next scene. But Michael actually getting shot, it's the one issue I have with Nick Castle's performance in the movie. He just looks kind of goofy. He gets shot, he's like, whoa, whoa. That brings it down a peg for me. At number 6, it's Loomis and Brackett's conversation in the Myers house. First of all, this is the best Loomis scene by far in this movie. He has so many iconic lines.
Man wouldn't do that. This isn't a man.
He really sells what Michael Myers is and why he's so afraid.
Because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
I think without this scene, so much of this movie would not work. Because everything I've been complimenting this movie for, like Michael being still and motionless and just standing there and staring and waiting, I don't think any of that would work nearly as well without this scene where Loomis articulates Michael's otherworldly aura. This is an essential scene. We're now at the top 5, and with number 5, we've got the closet scene. This is probably the most relentless, propulsive, and intense scene in Halloween. Everything about it is just unrelenting with Michael just shaking that closet door, punching out the slats. Jamie Lee Curtis's acting here is top notch. And the music, man, the Shape Stocks theme is so good in this movie because of the way it escalates. And then Laurie defending herself is fantastic. And the scene also gets off to a great start with Laurie thinking she's killed the boogeyman, and you see Michael creeping up in the background, and then when it's revealed that he's alive and he's just standing there, that's a great shot. The only thing holding it not back, but just from going higher in the top 5, is that this scene is all about payoff. It's not really about building up the suspense. The suspense already got built up. This is just a continuation of the final chase, and it does that incredibly well, but it's got to settle for number 5. Please forgive me, closet scene. Speaking of scenes that build up suspense, we're at number 4, and it's Michael watching Laurie as she walks home from school. So closet scene, if you want to take it out on someone, take it out on this scene. So we'd had Michael stalking Laurie earlier, right? But those are all like isolated incidents, and they don't really sell exactly what Michael is. This scene completely establishes that Michael is one creepy motherfucker. Like, he's just out there gawking at her, like, openly. He's not trying to hide. Like, yeah, once she spots him, he's like, all right, I'll walk behind this hedge, or I'll disappear from these sheets in Mr. Riddle's backyard. But he's allowing her to see him. It's just makes Michael seem more and more inhuman, because a normal human being would not be this brazen. And that's something that none of the Halloween movies really do. I can't think of very many shots where Michael is actually seen by the characters, except maybe when he looks at Molly and H2O, or god damn, am I about to praise Halloween Resurrection? When he is looking up at Laurie in the hospital. Oh god, let's forget I even said that part. So I think this scene is all about getting the audience's buy-in to the idea that this may be a man, but there is nothing human about him. This is the Shape. At number 3, we have the laundry room sequence where Michael stalks Annie. This scene is super underrated because I rarely see it mentioned when people talk about their favorite scenes in Halloween. But I think it encapsulates so much of what I love about this movie. It's incredibly patient. Michael could have gotten Annie multiple times. There's red herring after red herring, and he just waits. He just keeps putting it off. And I really appreciate how this scene escalates Michael's stalking. Like earlier in the movie when he was stalking Laurie, that was scary, but it was always from Laurie's point of view, and Michael was far away, so even though it was very unsettling, it was also a little bit detached. Then in the last scene, Michael was stalking Annie and he was up closer, but it was from Michael's point of view, so even though that was also intense, if he started to make a move to get closer to Annie, we're sort of with him, so we're seeing it, so it loses sort of that sense of, oh my god, where is he? This scene, though, it's focused on Annie, but then Michael just materializes here, there, over here, like behind her, and he's always like 3 or 4 feet away from her, and it's such an escalation. And this shit is even scarier by the fact that Michael doesn't kill Annie in the scene. I think this scene would be drastically less impactful if she actually died here. At number 2, and this is going to be controversial, I've got the final chase where Michael chases Laurie across the street. This is my favorite ending to any movie. It's incredible. There's so many indelible images in this scene, from Michael appearing in the inky blackness next to Laurie, to just like the shots of Michael walking towards her. Because in this movie, he is not a robot. He does not just walk like Dick Warlock. He lopes after Laurie. He's like gliding towards her. He walks like a normal person for the most part, other than barely moving his arms. But I love how the camera frames him. It's just, it always shows Laurie, then Michael, and it's always Michael a little closer, a little closer, a little closer. It just feels like evil is filling the frame. And this scene just represents Halloween having reached the very apex of the roller coaster, and now we're going down the roller coaster, and it is a relentless ride. It is such a fantastic chase scene. It's the most rewatchable sequence in the movie, this along with the rest of the final scenes. The only minor nitpicks I have are that I can buy Michael being a novice at this whole killing thing, but him just missing with the knife twice against Laurie here, That just does not ring true because we saw in the first scene that he is a freaking maestro at stabbing people when not even looking at the victim. So that minor flaw bumps this from the top spot. And at number 1, we have Laurie walking across the street. It's the scene right before that chase scene. I'm all about setup. I'm all about building suspense. I'm all about the patience. And no scene exemplifies that more than Laurie just walking across the street towards a house. I just mentioned how when Michael is walking after Laurie, the camera keeps switching back and forth between Laurie and Michael, and it shows like evil is approaching. Well, this scene does it too, because Laurie's walking towards the house where Michael is waiting, and it keeps swapping between shots of Laurie and the house. But it's this feeling of inevitability in this scene, just this mounting tension and pressure, and it's unbearable. Like, I don't know what movie builds to this level of suspense better than Halloween. And it all culminates in her finding those bodies. And horror movies do this all the time where a character finds bodies, but it's usually more haphazard, where bodies are just falling all over the place. This feels like Michael's masterpiece. I can't believe I just used a line from Halloween Kills. But that is what this is. Michael has laid out this tableau of bodies for Laurie to find. It's the culmination of his sick game that he's been playing with Laurie all movie long. It's just a masterful payoff to all of that escalating tension, and it sets us up for the phenomenal final chase. This is my number 1. Well, that was fun. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I had a blast doing it. I am going to consider doing it for the other Halloween movies and maybe other movies as well. So if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Though I don't really see you guys. But you guys see me. Whatever. I'll catch you guys later. Again, I don't care. What?